Good morning, everyone, and welcome to another episode here at the Damage Report. Today being a Thursday, you've clicked on that link having no goddamn idea who my co-host is going to be. But thankfully, we've got a surprise for you, a fun surprise. Joining us for the first time ever, Trae Crowder, welcome to the show, man.
Howdy, good morning. Thanks for having me.
We're glad to have you here. There was a great reception to your appearance on Indisputable, TRT Network. Big fans of your work. For those who might not be familiar with what you do, tell us a little bit about your work.
Well, I call myself a comedian, and in recent months that has meant mostly making funny videos on the computer. But I do live shows and stuff too. My thing is basically, I'm a hillbilly who says big words pretty much. Oh, he said a smart thing in a dumb sounding way. People like that. No, I make the liberal redneck videos is mostly what I'm known for, and I feel like the title's pretty self-explanatory. But yeah, that's how I while away my finite time before the grave, is doing those things.
I remember seeing some of the first videos of yours that went viral, and they really did stand out from a lot of stuff on YouTube that honestly looks like my frame of the video right now. It really did stand out, and that's awesome. I'm curious about you. So you said generally you would consider yourself more of a comedian than a political focused person. How did you get into talking more about politics? How did that evolution happen?
Well, I mean, so the liberal redneck thing is, I amp it up a little bit for the videos, but it comes from a very authentic place. I grew up in the middle of nowhere, Tennessee, a town with no traffic lights or McDonald's or anything. Very, very, very rural. And as long as I've been politically minded at all, so from like roughly high school on, I've been progressive without even admitting. That's just how I felt about things, and then found out that was unusual and different from the norms. I've always been hyper aware of it and being sort of out of place. And I've always been I've been prone to run my mouth my whole life as well. So I've been doing stand up for a while, and I would touch on these things on stage even then, talking about racism or, homophobia or making fun of Christianity or stuff like that. And then it just it was a natural extension of the type of things I was already doing on shows around the South and stuff, what I was doing at the time. So yeah, it was awesome. A very, very organic thing.
Cool, that's awesome. Well, we're gonna give you, I think, ample opportunity to run your mouth on our program today as we go through the next 90 minutes. So thank you everybody who's currently watching on the members app, on Twitch, on YouTube. We've got a lot planned for you. We are going to discuss, dissect what remains of the infrastructure bill. They've got a new framework, everybody. Time to get excited. We're gonna find out what's still in there and give you the progressive response to some of what's been taken out recently, which is, all of it. Then Tucker Carlson, he's ready to break down how January 6th was a complete false flag. I think that's fun. I used to watch old classic Alex Jones movies, and I like remakes as much as the next guy. So that should be a lot of fun. We're gonna get into that, and Merrick Garland gets grilled by Republican senators. We've got Fox praising Chinese propaganda films. It's gonna be fun, so don't go anywhere. But along the way, if you wouldn't mind hitting the like button and sharing the stream, that would be great. If you want to send us any comments, tweets, super chats, stuff like that, we'll respond as we go through. But with all that said, Trae, you ready to talk some politics?
Let's do it.
Okay, let's run our mouths. As of this morning, President Biden's got a whole new framework agreement for the infrastructure bill that he believes he's got 50 votes for. Spoiler alert, Senator Bernie Sanders says that's not the case. But before we get into some of the Democratic response to it, I wanna talk to you about what's actually in it. So it is a $1.75 trillion social safety net, they say. You might often see it described as 1.8 trillion. I love that they just round in a way to make it seem slightly more impressive, because it very much is not. But here is some of what is expected to be described and rolled out in remarks that Mr. Biden's gonna make a little bit later on today before he heads to Rome. So it includes universal preschool for more than 6 million 3- and 4-year-olds, and subsidies for child care that would limit costs to no more than 7% of income for most families. That program would be funded for 6 years. It also includes about $555 billion for programs to move Americans to electric vehicles and entice utilities away from natural gas and coal. this, if it passes in that way, would represent the largest federal investment in combating climate change. But I will also jump out in front of it and say that second part of it, enticing utilities to move away from coal, already was killed from the original bill. Joe Manchin owns exactly as many coal companies as he did a couple of weeks ago. So I'm not sure why they think in this new framework agreement it would pass. But those are a couple of good things. And we have a list of some more that we'll discuss. But Trae, this is the first that we're talking about any of this process that's now been stretching for months. So what do you think about where we've ended up in terms of what's still in the bill?
I mean, I'm just super frustrated that we seem to be held hostage by just pretty much just two people from where I'm standing. You know what I mean? That just the Manic Pixie Dream senator and like a personification of the company stove from the song 16 Tons. That's a real deep cut right there. But I'm talking about Joe Manchin. And it's just, and obviously they represent their own moneyed interest, and it's so transparent, and they don't seem to care that it's transparent because they don't have to care, and they're not beholden to any of their actual constituents or what the people want at all, and none of that matters. And I just find it all extremely disheartening. I don't know what else to say about it. Of course, they've whittled it away, and they'll continue doing that until it's like functionally irrelevant at the end of the day, if anything ever even passes at all. I'm not brimming with hope, if I haven't made that apparent already. But it's just a real shame. That's what I think.
Yeah, what you said there about it being like so blatant. That's really the thing that like, it's not like I expected that this thing was gonna end up being awesome. I expected betrayals, like I was getting my back ready for the dagger and everything. But the fact that they don't even pretend like Joe Manchin, don't these rich people generally try to hide some of the things that they own? It was way too easy to find out exactly his economic interests here. Sinema won't even just talk to the protesters for 1 minute,
Right.
Like pretend that you're a representative in a functioning democracy, but they won't even give us that surface level thing.
No, she seems like offended. She seems like she feels that she's the victim of her own constituents, like she's being victimized by people trying to hold her accountable, when she is supposed to represent them. She's infuriating. A very quick aside, I didn't know, maybe most people do already know this, but I found out only recently doing a thing for my Patreon where I reviews, I give Yelp reviews to politicians and stuff, and I did Kirsten Sinema, and I didn't know until that moment that she started out as extremely progressive, especially for the time. She was like a real firebrand progressive when she got started in the early aughts out there in Arizona. And I mean wild stuff, like doing the equivalent of Jane Fonda from Vietnam stuff, but for the Afghanistan war at the time, first openly bisexual person and all this, and talking smack about the Lord and stuff. Things really close to my heart is what I'm saying. And I never knew that about her. And I think that makes it all the more disappointing where she has ended up, because, they can get to any of them eventually. They being the corporations and the money people and all that. You can be corrupted.
Watching people who seemed so set being co-opted, I guess in the end, it's not that surprising. These people have a lot of money to buy people with, but it is disheartening, and it leads to a lot of suspicion that it will happen to other people, and we do have to be on the watch for that. I want to let you know some of what else is in the bill. So it includes $200 billion to extend an expanded tax credit for parents through 2022. I mean, sure, the tax credit is wildly popular. It did a great job in cutting a significant chunk out of childhood poverty. So for all of that, extend it for 1 year, And afterward, I'm sure the poverty won't come back. You got some money to extend, to reduce premiums for people covered through the ACA, money to help seniors trying to get in-home care, building 1 million affordable housing units. I mean, America is racked with a housing crisis of multiple facets right now. I feel like we could be putting more money and more attention into that, but that's what you get. And $40 billion for worker training and higher education, including, and this is maybe my favorite part of this entire thing, increasing annual Pell Grants by $550. So originally they were going to do free community college, which is, let's just agree, a major step back from what Bernie Sanders ran on years ago, which is 4 years of free public college. A guy went to UConn, the University of Connecticut, you could do something like that. They dialed it way back to free community college. Now it's $550. Like, good, I'll get my bag packed for Harvard right now, actually, with the $550. So that's basically everything big that remains in the bill, Trae.
Yeah, I mean, the college one is a good example of illustrating like how diluted and watered down it has become, because like you said, because not only the way you framed it, but also keeping in mind at the same time how much more expensive college has gotten and continues to get, for everybody during that time, and it just keeps getting whittled away further and further. And yeah, $550, that will that buy you like 3 books? I don't even know if kids still use books. Is it like digital? I don't even know what they do anymore. But I guarantee you, it's still a racket though, because I remember when I was in college, the books were outrageous. $550 probably won't even get you a semester's worth of just the textbooks they require you to have. The ones where your professor has written their own book and forces you to buy it and all that type of fun stuff that goes on in college. But yeah, it's not enough.
Yeah, no, totally. I mean, I remember it's been a while since I was buying college books, but yeah, the books were $100, $200 for some of these. I was briefly an engineering student. You can see how well that went. And yeah, it was a couple $100. And if they're digital, I don't know, but I guarantee they're the exact same price. More likely, you probably buy the book, and the book has a code for some digital thing. That way, they can change it every single year and get you to buy new ones. I would assume. But anyway, $550 is not going to get you through college. Will it keep up with like inflation and education costs over the next couple of years? I don't even know if it'll do that. But we also have some inclusions for revenue. Apparently, Joe Manchin and Carlson Cinema, everybody's got to sleep a little bit, so they were able to sneak through a little bit. So it includes supposedly, and remember, this hasn't passed yet, but it includes a 15% minimum tax on the reported profits of large corporations. We can definitely debate that number, but I like that it's on the reported profits, because obviously there's an incentive for corporations to go to their board and to their shareholders and be like, we made a ton of money. And then when they actually file their taxes, they're like, well, maybe it wasn't so big. Now it's on what you actually report. So it should be more accurate. Efforts to reduce profit shifting, a 1% tax on corporate stock buybacks. That is so minimal. Increased enforcement for large corporations and the wealthy at the IRS, something Ro Khanna was pushing for a while back, and an additional 5% tax on incomes exceeding 10 million a year and 3% on incomes above 25 million. Now, all of these are much smaller than what was initially being talked about. But my question for you, Trae, is there's a little bit of corporate tax there, and there's a little bit of tax on the wealthy. Why would Manchin and Cinema let those through now when they stopped them in the first go round?
Yeah, I don't know, other than it comes down to like, if they are ultimately willing to compromise at all, that they have a point that they're previous that they've agreed upon reaching amongst themselves or something. But I agree with you. I don't know why they would go about doing that. And also, the one about increased enforcement for large corporations and the wealthy seems like arguably the most important one to me, because I've been thinking lately about like the Pandora Papers and all that stuff, and all the reports of just what the ultra wealthy all around the world can and do with their money to avoid paying any taxes on it. And it's like, it's hard to even wrap your brain around it if you're just a simple peon like myself, because they have legions of accountants that do nothing but hide their money in shell companies inside of shell companies and all that stuff. They find any way they can to get around this stuff in the first place. So, it's all kind of, until that gets sort of sewn up better, the rest of it seems less important to me anyway, until we find a way to actually make them do it.
Yeah, no, and I'm glad that you pointed that out. I totally agree. I'm glad that there are some people that have been pushing for it. I don't know if you feel the same way, but it's one of those things that I agree with, and because I'm not a straight news person. I let people know what I want, and I try to persuade them to support the same thing. It's one of the weirdest things to try to persuade people on, because we sort of just grow up hearing like the IRS is bad. So why would you want more IRS, more enforcement? But it's one of those things where like they've been very successful in collapsing every class distinction into just the IRS is bad for everyone, but it's not really. Like, if you're making a regular working class salary, the IRS matters to you much less than it does to a wealthy person who has those legions of accountants you were talking about, and they have their tricks and their shell corporations and all that stuff. So you need to convince people to support something that they've been propagandized against, because it's one of the most important things for making sure that the minimal tax laws that we have on the books are actually enforced.
Yeah, I don't know if there's a way to frame it more as like, as opposed to more funding for the IRS, just, frame it as more funding for policing these people and entities specifically. You know what I mean? Because you're right. People they dislike and distrust the IRS, after generations of everything, news stories about Willie Nelson, folk songs, all this stuff, they'll come and take all your stuff and everything. Yeah. But I don't know.
Yeah. Well, look, there is a response to all of these recent developments from progressives in Congress, progressive senators. So we're gonna give that to you in just a little bit. We are gonna take our first break though. When we come back, we'll have that. We'll also likely have Tucker Carlson. Fox News is giving him a special, which is great because Tucker really doesn't get much airtime on Fox. It's good that they found a special time that they can focus on him. We'll have all that for you and more after this. Okay, everybody, I know what you all crave. You crave more talk about the infrastructure bill. Well, don't worry, we're about to make it a little bit spicy. Let's jump into this video.
And the only sort of rationale that I've heard from Manchin is this quote unquote entitlement mentality. He seems to be regurgitating talking points from the 1980s when we are existing within a 21st century multiracial democracy that's going through a climate crisis and trying to recover from COVID. Building back better is building back better for all people, including poor people, people of color, and those who are trying to start families.
So there you have Representative Jamal Bowman on CNN last night talking about Joe Manchin being one of the main forces for stripping paid leave out of the infrastructure bill. Just to be clear, not no longer 12 weeks as they had talked about, and then it became 4 weeks. No paid leave whatsoever. But don't worry, they are talking about a plan for paid leave where you get to pay into it and then take the money out. Love when they have programs like that. That's always how their programs that benefit billionaires work. The billionaires need to pay into it and then they get the money back or whatever. But anyway, I love his point there about Manchin and his 80s talking points. I think he could have gone a little bit harder. This is effectively Joe Manchin's welfare queen's point. You all are entitled. Now you think you should be able to bond with your kid for a couple days before we throw you back in the mine. And yet, without having anything more nuanced or sophisticated than those talking points, Manchin appears to have won on that topic. Paid leave appears to be out. And that seems super consequential. It's not the only thing that's been taken out, but it's one of the biggest parts, I think. Trae, what do you think?
Yeah, I just hate how we just can't get anything. You know what I mean? It's like you're entitled if you want any kind of, basic human decency allocated to your working experience in this country. It's like they act like it's totally unreasonable to even request it. Like everything, the wheels will just come off if people get any paid leave, as though there aren't all kinds of other countries in the Western world that do that and much more that are doing just fine and arguably better than us, and it's and so many people just go along with these arguments and act like it makes you lazy and entitled to just want to be treated a little bit better. And they get so red in the face and upset at the notion of giving any kind of ground whatsoever. And, it's all very shameless as well. There's no, like as we were saying earlier, they're very transparent about it, I feel like, and just seem to have no shame whatsoever about the way they feel about these things.
Yeah, and no, you're totally right. Like compared to basically every other, as Bernie would say, advanced country, we get nothing. And look, if you poll people about paid leave, majority is supportive of it, obviously. Generally more supportive for maternity leave than paternity leave. We've apparently bought into what sitcoms have told us, that dads are pointless, so why have them around? But it just bothers me so much that on this topic, there do seem to be some people who accept that why would you ever get time off? Like, we have been so ground down as a people to expect basically nothing from our employers, no material improvement in our lives. And I see it coming from a lot of different corners. So you got Joe Manchin saying his entitlement stuff. And look, we've been called lazy so many times that most of us believe it. You got people like Tucker Carlson mocking, Pete Buttigieg, why would a guy ever take leave? But then you even have like Joe Rogan yesterday he thought it was ridiculous that a dad would take time off. And obviously a lot of his listeners are working class guys who are being indoctrinated to believe that you don't deserve that time. It's weird if you take that time. Why don't we expect more? Why don't, like, we 175 years ago had big labor movement. We eventually got a weekend. We stopped making kids mine coal and everything. And then pretty much at that point, we decided things should never, ever get any better. And I just don't understand why we don't have higher expectations for ourselves or for our country.
Yeah, I think the paternity leave thing, I think there's a whole lot of bros. There's like toxic masculinity involved with a lot of guys feeling like that's not, whatever. I can't use any of the words that they would use on this program to describe what that makes you to stay at home with a baby. You know what I mean?
Cuck is okay. I think you can say
okay,
cuck.
A cuck or a wuss or whatever. But you know what I'm trying to say. They feel like that's what that makes you to, care for your infant child at home or whatever. Like, bro, what a cuck. To me, just why wouldn't you want to just be home for a while? Like, have some time off.
Yeah.
Like, it's cuckish to just not be at work for a while. I mean, I guess a lot of them think it is. I don't know, but it's just their brains work so differently than mine, I guess. I've always been the type, like, I'll take any single ounce of, anything that I can take from the man, I will at every turn, when I'm working for the man, which I'm thankfully not right now. But yeah, the whole attitude is weird to me. I don't understand why anybody on any part of the political spectrum would be opposed to receiving these amenities from the people they work for. You know what I mean? It sounds like things that anyone would be like, yeah, even if I don't personally want it, yeah, let's have more of that. But a whole lot of people don't feel that way. And whether it's for cuck reasons or lazy reasons or whatever, that's just all kind of brainwashing that's going on, I think, into demonizing these things that would benefit almost everybody. It's weird.
100%. Yeah, this is really when toxic masculinity goes wrong. Like, toxic masculinity, is supposed to, at the end of the day, for all of its negative effects, it's supposed to benefit the toxic guys. Like, that's the goal. It's elevating you above other sorts of people. In this case, do you idiots not realize that you're hurting yourself too? I don't understand it, but I don't listen to a lot of those shows. Anyway, okay, so a lot has been pulled out of the infrastructure bill. We've listened to people like Jamal Bowman talk about the issues with it. So I think the necessary follow-up question is, with all that's been taken out, are you still going to support it? And thankfully, Jamal Bowman was asked about this. So here's his response.
I think if that's out, are you in?
That remains to be determined. We're the only developed country in the world that does not have paid family leave. We were supposed to be at 12 weeks. It went down to 4 weeks, and now it's out. Even though the majority of the country supports paid family leave. It's archaic, it's inhumane to ask a mom or new parents to leave their child in childcare while they have to go back to work to try to earn a living and keep a roof over their heads. So it remains to be determined where I am now that I'm hearing that is out. Again, it's unfortunate that we have a minority senator, one person who opposes this where the majority of the country supports it. So for me, it's unacceptable.
So he says it's unacceptable. He was asked a couple times, so will you vote for it? And he does say that remains to be seen, which, I like Jamal Bowman. I've talked with Jamal Bowman. I don't like the answer remains to be seen. Everything conceivable in the universe remains to be seen. I would like a bit more specificity. But we do know Bernie Sanders, who if he votes against it, the entire thing is dead, like literally just him. He says if we fail, in my view, if the American people do not believe that government can work for them and is dominated by powerful special interests, the very fabric of American democracy is in danger. People will no longer have faith that their government represents them. That's what this issue is about. And by the way, I would add on, and they would be 100% right, because it is clear that a critical mass of senators have no interest whatsoever in representation. Rashida Tlaib says, I'm not gonna sell out my district for a bill that was written by the fossil fuel industry and championed by 2 Dem senators who bow down to big pharma and corporate polluters. I know Pramila Jayapal has been pressured about this, hasn't been totally clear about what's gonna happen, but it would only take a couple of progressives to tank this. So the question is, will they? Another question is, should they? Trae, what do you think about this? Where do you see this going?
Ultimately, wherever the moneyed interest want it to go, probably, unfortunately, because it's like Bernie and you were just saying, and Tlaib was pointing out, that's really how it works at the end of the day. And again, just the transparency of it, the bald audacity of how upfront they are with the influences that really operate on them is what upsets me the most about it. Brief anecdote: I was a correspondent on this news magazine pilot that didn't become a show, and I went to my home state of Tennessee and covered this medical marijuana legislation that was about to happen there, and of course it ultimately failed. And I was talking to the 2 guys that authored it, and they were conservatives, state level conservatives in Tennessee, who authored this medical marijuana bill. And I asked them, among your constituents, how much pushback do you see for this? And they were like, oh, almost none. And these are people with rural counties and stuff. They're like, really, no one is opposed to this at all. And I said, and what do you think the odds are of it passing? And they said, oh, it's a coin flip at best. It probably won't. And I said, well, how is that possible? How do you explain that? And they're like, well, some of our colleagues in the state Congress, some of their interest groups just haven't been convinced yet, And I was like, what? Why does that? Who cares, But they just openly will admit that it was like the private industry, the private prisons and law enforcement, were the interests who were just gonna determine whether that happened or not. And they would just and they acting like I'm stupid for being upset about it. They were like, that's how things work, Trae. That's just the way it is. And that is just the way it is, and and it makes me furious, and it's very, again, discouraging and upsetting, but that's just where we're at. That's why I think the number one thing ultimately, and I don't know how we do it considering the way that everything works right now, is to get the money out of American politics as much as possible, because that's the whole and entire reason that we're even talking about any of this right now, is because of them. So, yeah, again, if you can't tell, I'm not super hopeful right now, but I'd like to see things, get better and clean up, but we'll see.
Yeah, no, you're totally right. And there really are, there's different levels of, I don't know if ignorance is the right word, but it's one level to not understand the way that things are. It's another level to understand and not be bothered anymore by the way things are.
Yeah.
And to not use the platform you have if you're in the media to make it clear. And we're gonna have an example of that in just a little bit with a tweet from Casey Hunt. I get that this is how it is. I also think it shouldn't be the way that it is, and we can do something socially in terms of media to stop that. And look, they can vote against it. They could also threaten to vote against it, and I would say could have been doing that more along the way. But I will also remind people that what I've been saying from the very beginning in this is you have these 2 bills. And you have the quote unquote moderates, I hate that term, who like one and don't like the other. You have progressives who like the other one, but not the first one. And in theory, either side could tank the entire thing, but that has never, ever been an even playing field, because the progressives really want the one to be good and are willing to accept the other. The so-called moderates are perfectly fine with the government literally never doing anything ever. Manchin Cinema are not gonna bawl themselves to sleep if the bipartisan one ends up not passing. So that's one of the the political handicaps that we've dealt with from the very beginning of this. But I also feel free.
The dynamic with the progressive caucus and the moderates and everything and what's going on there. I mean, I want the progressives to continue to hold the line as much as possible, because what else are they supposed to do? And in my opinion, it feels like their only option. But I mean, having said that, of course, if where that ends up going is that just nothing happens, then that's a victory for the moderates as well because of what you just said. It's so fun. It's always been wild to me how many Congress people we have on both sides who seem to be totally unaware of the fact that they are ostensibly lawmakers. That is their job, is to do stuff, because man, they hate doing stuff. They'll go out of their way to avoid doing anything. My default assumption is always, with any kind of congressional proceedings, that the ultimate result of it will be pretty much nothing. So, we'll see what happens. But I mean, they have to keep, like I said, they need to take and maintain a stand for sure. So I don't know how it's going to go.
And by the way, so we have someone started a Twitch poll: should progressives kill the bill? And yes has an unambiguous 100% of the vote, which is fine, and it would send a signal. But one thing, and I'm paraphrasing, he can respond if he thinks that I'm misconstruing what he said. But one disagreement I have with Cenk is that killing it would send a strong signal to the moderates. But again, I would say, will it if they don't care?
No,
it's not like they'll learn. I mean, and by the way,
same way about it.
Yeah, that is a terrible position for us to be in. It's like it's a feeling of powerlessness, and I hate being the one to point out how powerless we can be. But the people who defend the status quo, by their very nature, don't have much that they need, because the status quo is working fine for them. Okay, well, maybe tomorrow we'll get into this this media stuff, because no matter what happens, the progressives are definitely going to get blamed for it. That's going to be fun. But with the time that we have, why don't we jump into this next topic?
Domestic war on terror is here, is coming after half of the country.
The helicopters have left Afghanistan, and now they've landed here at home.
And the left is hunting the right, sticking them in Guantanamo Bay for American citizens, leaving them there to rot.
We are dealing with an insurgency in the United States.
Terrorism from white supremacy is the most lethal threat to homeland.
I've been told that I'm a white nationalist. Me.
FBI, put all your hands up.
They've begun to fight a new enemy in a new war on terror.
Not Al-Qaeda, white supremacy.
False flags have happened in this country. One of which may have been January 6th.
His truth is marching on.
Okay, so that was simultaneously one of the craziest things that I've ever seen on the mainstream media, and very run of the mill for Alex Jones. That is like every promo for Alex Jones that I've ever seen, but that was not on InfoWars. That is going to be on Fox News. Tucker Carlson is going to interview Ali Alexander, who did the Stop the Steal thing, who hangs out with right-wing militia members and stuff like that. They called it a false flag. They used footage of Osama bin Laden. They said they're gonna send conservatives to Guantanamo Bay and waterboard them. Waterboarding apparently has now become a bad thing. Fox has never felt that before. They're sending out the helicopters against American citizens. They were fine with it when they were buzzing the protesters in DC just 2 years ago, but now it's a problem. Anyway, Trae, Like, I don't know how much you pay attention or care indeed what Tucker Carlson gets up to or Fox News, but that seems pretty crazy.
Yeah, all right. So, you got like a rundown of this show. You guys give it to me, so I sort of know what we're going to be talking about. The Tucker Carlson thing was added this morning. I'm sorry to get inside baseball here, but the point is, I had not watched that yet until just now when you played it. And I'm really upset by that. That was way more hardcore and worse than I thought it was going to be. You're right; it's par for the course for like Alex Jones, but it's a different context. I mean, of course I know that Fox News is terrible, but that's taken. I mean, they just baldly stated at the end of it, straight up, that January 6th was a false flag. I mean, that's a lot. And the only thing, right now, I'm still like in my head, trying to like. Somehow deal with what I feel like that says about so many people in this country who watch Fox News, and it's like, well, they probably, most of them already believe all that anyway, but that's also very scary that they don't need to be, that this is pandering as opposed to like, influencing. You know what I mean? Like the difference, like that they're like not turning anybody with this. They're just pandering to what they already think. Sure. That's terrifying too, because that stuff is crazy. Like it all just gets crazier and crazier. The crazy never backpedals at all for a second. We just keep going down the same crazy path. And I don't know what kind of pot of radioactive gold is at the end of it, but I guess we're going to find out. Eventually, I don't know. I didn't like that.
No, I didn't either. Here's some more inside baseball for you. I didn't watch it beforehand either for a combination of two reasons. One, little bit of laziness. Two, I like to give my like raw reaction. That was 75% crazier than I thought it was going to be. It's called Patriot Purge. When you hear the word purge, what do you think of? In recent years, yeah, the dude on the horse with a grenade launcher and a mask on or whatever. I don't watch those movies, but yes, and that guy on the horse with the grenade launcher, definitely a Bernie supporter. Anyway, no, this is madness. That part too. The whole it's secretly Antifa thing is always funny to me because like all you had to do is watch footage from January 6th to know it's like these are not crunchy Pacific Northwest, shadow liberals or whatever. These are mayonnaise Americans, when they're mall ninja gear, looking all Walmarty, like it, and look, I'm a trailer American myself, so I'm allowed to say these things, but these are not like, all you got to do is look at it to know that like, this is Randy and them, your cousins from middle America. It's not the crunchy coastal bloggers who are showing up to these things. And I guess their whole rationale is like, yeah, that's what they want you to think. Like Tristan went deep undercover for weeks, putting on 30 pounds and growing out, stupid looking facial hair and buying trucker hats and stuff so he could like slip, learning my accent so he could infiltrate these people. I don't know. It's all just, it's ridiculous. So ridiculous. Well, and look, if you're gonna say that it's Antifa, if you're gonna say that it secretly is a false flag, it means it didn't happen and it certainly wasn't Trump supporters. At least be consistent about it. Like you can't say that it was Antifa, like, and then the same people like Matt Gaetz and Marjorie Greene are trying to break into the prison to set the people free. Because you definitely aren't trying to set Antifa free. You're trying to set conservatives free. So which is it? How are they switching? Right. It's like a light switch. Antifa, conservative, depending on the day and what I need to say. It's ridiculous.
Well, they also, because they act like it was justified, in the first place. Like the January 6th proceedings were right and justified. That's part of their argument. But also like at the same time, except for all of the actual bad stuff that happened there, which wasn't us anyway, that was Antifa. So most of it was fine and good. The few things that were bad wasn't us, that was Antifa. And that's how they have to sort of parse it all out in their brains.
100%. And you know what, actually, It's one thing for us to point to people other than Tucker Carlson with that hypocrisy, but I believe Tucker Carlson could actually make that case for us. Let's play a little bit more of his commentary from one of the many shows on Fox that he hosts every single day.
I'm sorry to say this, but you can see why the people who showed up in Washington on January 6th were mad. It was not, an excuse for their criminal behavior, those who committed vandalism, but like, I get it.
Yeah, it's not an excuse, except it totally is, and I get. So wait, which was it? Were they FBI plants and Antifa, or was it 1776 and they're just justified angry Americans? The same guy on the same day is having it both ways, and I don't know a lot of people who regularly watch a lot of Fox News. I'm gonna admit the bubble that I'm in that. I doubt a lot of them though heard that and thought, hey, that seems inconsistent. Like they follow along. Being inconsistent, outwardly inconsistent, and just openly having it both ways like that is like sort of their whole thing. I feel like recently, they end up saying these like things that seem like left-wing talking points, but they're typical right-wing lunacy. Like with not taking vaccines, it's because it's their body and it's their choice. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And like you've got DeSantis and other Republican governors vouching for unemployment benefits now, but only for people who lost their job because they won't get vaccinated. You know what I mean? Stuff like that. Like they do this type of thing all the time, at where anyone could see that it's logically inconsistent at the very surface level, but they just roll right ahead with it anyway, with a smile on their face. It doesn't bother or affect them at all, and seems to be working for their people. So I guess they're right. It doesn't matter. It's only us who are upset by it. Yeah, no, I mean, it certainly is working for Tucker Carlson. I mean, the guy spent the last year and a half trying every day to kill his fans with a lethal virus. And he comes out of that period with a bigger audience and making much more money. So look, I'm making basically the same as the beginning. So I guess his strategy is better than mine. But anyway, look, it's crazy. And for him, it's probably just the grift. He's giving his audience, like you said, it's pandering to his audience. He knows what they want and that's what he's going to give them. But we now live in a country where the largest news show in the country is going to do the same exact thing as Alex Jones. And they're gonna convince right-wingers that they are about to be rounded up by Joe Biden and to be executed or sent to Guantanamo Bay. And maybe nothing comes from that. Maybe that doesn't have any ramifications for democracy or for political violence or anything, but that is a hell of a gamble for us to make. It certainly doesn't seem like this results in anything positive for our country. Any final thoughts, Trae?
No, just that's one of their another one of their kind of like having it both ways things. It's just with liberals in general. It's like, are we weak-willed, ineffectual, soy boys, or are we like elite, covert, infiltrators of their entire culture? Like we've got a whole like special forces unit operating under the surface to instigate all these false flag attacks and stuff like that.
Yep.
And at the same time, they say that, liberals are just limp-wristed hippies. You know what I mean? Like it's every facet of their ideology seems to be logically inconsistent to me. And yet it soldiers on.
Yeah, we used to talk about Antifa super soldiers that are coming with grenade launchers, but they can't lift a glass of oat milk to their lips.
Right.
So, and it makes sense to them.
Right.
Anyway. Okay, so we're gonna take our second break, everybody, but we've got more. When we come back, we're gonna be talking about the grilling of Merrick Garland, Nazi salutes in school board meetings. It's gonna be a lot of fun. We'll be back in just a few. Okay, but before we get back into the news, I do want to let you know about a few things going on here at the TYT Network, including if you are one of the people who watch our live show of TDR at youtube.com/theyoungturks, then I am talking to you. Starting November 1st, you're not gonna be able to do that anymore. The multicast of our show is going to be ending, but you can still watch, and I would love it if you would. All you have to do is go to youtube.com/thedamagereport, our actual YouTube channel. You can subscribe, you can ring the bell to get notifications. and you can keep watching the show. And I know that the last few times I've talked about this, I've confused a lot of people. So if you watch the show literally anywhere else, don't worry, nothing's changing, just at the Young Turks. And that's starting on November 1st. Also wanna let you know that coming up right after our program, as always, you can watch Dr. Rashad Richey and Indisputable. Gonna be joined by one, I've never heard of this person. Senator Nina Turner is gonna be joining Rashad Richey on Indisputable. Should be a lot of fun. That's coming up at youtube.com/indisputable_TYT. Also, after our show, and I get that I'm gonna be making you make a difficult decision. We're gonna be doing our live member Q&A for tier 3 members on YouTube. So feel free to join us for that as well. That said, oh damn, we only have a few more minutes. You know what? I'm gonna pull a little bit of a, why don't we go to E? We go to E? Sorry, we just don't have time for D. We'll get back to it. We'll go back to it afterward. Ready to go? Okay, let's do it. Walmart has announced that they're gonna be raising the minimum wage for certain employees, but not others. And wait until you hear some of these specifics. So they're gonna be raising the minimum wage at Sam's Club to $15 an hour. But if you work at Walmart, you're gonna have to be happy at 12 for some reason. And bear in mind that this is the largest employer in the US with nearly 1.6 million workers. So that affects so many people, so many people. It's a pretty good bump for Sam's Club from $11 to $15 an hour, but it's just one extra buck for people at Walmart. And by the way, think about how this works in practice. So we have some specifics. Mendy Hughes is a 46-year-old who's worked as a cashier in Melbourne, Arkansas for 11 years. She makes $12.85. Over a decade at the company, she makes 85 cents more than a brand new hire and says you can't pay your bills, rent, and buy groceries on 12 an hour. I don't think anywhere in the US you can do that. No way. I don't understand how they think $12 an hour is enough to live on, because it's not at all. And of course, Walmart does not think that it's enough to live on, but they do think it's enough to get people in communities where other jobs have been destroyed by Walmart coming in to apply for a job at Walmart. So Trae, it's a raise, but it's not much of one.
Yeah, it's another thing that I don't understand why more people aren't upset by it. They get all up in arms about welfare and welfare queens and stuff, but corporate welfare like this, where essentially Walmart's being subsidized by taxpayers because their employees can't afford to actually live on just the salary they make there alone. Everybody's just fine with that. Another thing that I think works against it is you start saying people that work at Walmart should be paid more money, and for some reason, a lot of people hear that and feel like you're comparing people that work at Walmart to them and what they do. So they're like, well, I'm a paramedic and I don't make $15 an hour. You're saying a cashier at Walmart deserves more than me? And of course, the answer is no, we're saying you're both getting screwed. You're both getting a raw deal. It should be better for both of you. You don't have to frame it that way, but so many people do. And I just think in a country that purports to be the greatest in the world, if you work a full-time job, you should be able to pay all your living expenses, and that shouldn't be a controversial opinion. And in my conversations with conservatives, it's not controversial. They will agree with that. But then when you say, well, what do you think about the fact that that is not true? Typically, anecdotally, they will bring up well, I'd like to see what these people are spending their money on. It always goes to laziness and irresponsibility. They assume that they're foregoing fixing their brakes or something so they can get drunk instead, things like that, which of course that's not how anyone is for the most part. But it's all these false narratives that persist that work against movements like this one, and it drives me crazy.
100%. I totally agree. And there's no expectation that on a place, because this is 1.6 million jobs spread across America. There's no expectation that on Fox News, which is filled with right-wing populists, that your wage should ever go up. They spread things like that. Like you said, what do they spend their money on? Are they buying alcohol? Or Bill O'Reilly for years would say, how poor can you be if you have a microwave? And yet they talk about elitists who don't understand these areas. But that is, first of all, they all live in New York City. And yet the coastal elitists who are presumably libs don't understand these people. These people who can't be poor because they have a TV. They can't be poor because they can freeze their food temporarily. It's insane and it's insulting, and this is not nearly enough. If you work at Walmart, if you work at anywhere, there is a political movement that wants your conditions to improve. You just need to actually look for it. Unfortunately, that is all the time we have for our first hour. If you've been watching on our linear platform, thank you so much for watching. If you're on Twitch or YouTube, though, we do have more news for you. We're gonna take a short break, but just a few minutes. We'll be back after this.
Thanks for listening to the full episode of The Damage Report. Support our work, listen ad-free, access members-only bonus content, and more by subscribing to Apple Podcasts at apple.co/TYT. I'm your host, John Adarola. I'll see you soon.